Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin this evening program, we will begin with the national anthem. We invite you to please stand and face our flag, which is here as the national anthem is being played by our jazz band. Come on, play ball. Okay. Some enthusiasm will work as we're trying to deal with a very difficult, challenging moment for this evening. Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. Ronald K. Beauchamp. I am the director of the Niebuhr Center for Faith and Action and assistant professor for intercultural studies. I need to thank the following partners with our department for their support of this event before we go any further. They've worked so tirelessly behind the scenes to make this program successful this evening. My hat goes off to the Elmhurst College Jazz Band. My hat goes off to Chartwell's Food Service, to the Office of Leadership, Service and Engagement, to the Chaplain's Office, the Development Office, Patterson Center for Health Professions, Athletics, Political Science, Service Learning, School for Professional Studies, Campus Security and Facilities, Marketing and Communications, and of course the Elmhurst College students who this program is dedicated to. Let us put our hands together and to thank these people appropriately. If while you are here or viewing this with us through our streaming process, we invite you to consider the School for Professional Studies, where we are hopefully here to encourage and engage other people to consider coming back and sharing with Elmhurst in their adult years. Before I introduce the moderators for this evening, I want to start this program by giving you a little background of my interests. People have been asking me all along, why are you doing this program and why is it so important to you? Well, I have a little bit of a story. It starts with my father. He came to know of the service by coming out of a little town called Utica, Mississippi. And while down there, they were sharecroppers. They didn't have a lot. His older brothers went to go serve, one in the Air Force and the other in the Navy. My father wasn't of age, but he asked his mother for permission to enlist so he could be part of World War II. My grandmother, who loved all of her sons, did not want to see the last one go. She trusted God and she said, I would like for you to go ahead and go. So my father enlisted and had spent most of his time in World War II, during the Korean War, and starting in the Vietnam War. He served for over 20-some years and he left the service as a master sergeant. That story is very real to me because it was those principles that he learned in the military. It's those principles that we talked about in our office, that my colleagues and others saw their fathers, their relatives, like mine, struggle to rise to the occasion to support their country. After I recognized this, I began to say, through my family, my older brother served in Vietnam and suffers from post-traumatic disorder. I have cousins that have gone and one that's also struggling since coming back from Afghanistan war, suffering as well. We've discovered that many people in this area have interest in this subject, but don't know how to talk about it and don't know how to share. So it was our goal to talk to you through an academic, educational perspective. As the country begins to ask the simple question, what will we do with all the veterans when they return? My staff gathered and considered what we could say or do to help Elmhurst College prepare itself. We discovered in our initial efforts that many of our students were hesitant to support. Many of them asked questions like, why would you want to do that? We're liberals. We don't necessarily believe in war. I don't think anyone believes in war, but war is necessary. Today, you will hear from veterans that have served during our country's most difficult times. As we take a moment to remember the men and women who have served our country, let us take a moment today to reflect on the people who lost their lives in 9/11. Just 12 years ago today, and let us say a silent prayer for the families of all those who have served in the wars, and they have had many issues that have come about because of it. Some of us have lost lives, some have lost limbs, others have mental distress from sounds and visual reminders of times of the war. Let us take a moment and pause in silence and say a prayer for them. Amen. We have a lot of people here with us to support us, from individuals from the Cincy Candle Company, from commanders from the American Legion, from others who are here to support these efforts tonight. I bring to the stage the moderators for tonight's event to help lead us and guide us through this dialogue. Dr. Mary Walsh, who is one of our professors on the campus, who is teaching a course with her first-year seminar students related to the subject matter, and Mark Draper, the Assistant Director of the Niebuhr Center for Faith and Action, who is our church historian and a history enthusiast. They will present the panel and conduct the Q&A. Let's put our hands together and welcome these two to the stage.
Well, as a lifelong lover of history and military history, this is Christmas Day for me. I'm enjoying this, and this is a privilege to be able to sit with these people and have dinner with them and talk about them, and just even on the phone, talking to them about their stories. It's just been, like I said, it's been Christmas Day just to kind of sit and it's a privilege, and it's sobering, and it's honoring, and it's just a great opportunity. What I'd like to do tonight is this. I learned about most of my military history, not just from class, but from talking to veterans. I was a kid in Philly, and on a hot summer day, what did you do? You sat out on your stoop, and that's where the neighbors sat. And you sat down and you had conversation, and you talked to Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones, and you found out, where'd you get that tattoo of an anchor? Let me tell you. And stories like that. And that's how I learned about World War II and the Korean War and the Vietnam War. Afghanistan and Iraq, I've learned as an adult. And so I want this to be a conversation. I want us to enjoy just letting these wonderful people tell us their stories and let them ask questions of each other and sort of corroborate. And then later, when we're in about 45 minutes or so, we're going to open up to the floor to allow you to ask them some questions. And so before we go on, two people I want to thank very much. I want to thank Bill Shanklin. Bill, can you stand up? Bill has been awesome. Bill has helped us get the people you are seeing in front of you. He has been awesome. Give him a round of applause. Bill would call me on my cell phone and say, Mark, I've got someone else that's interested in being on the panel. And so that's just been a blessing. And so the next I want to introduce Dr. Mary Walsh.
I am Mary Walsh from Political Science. I am privileged to be guiding a first-year seminar class this semester in which we are looking at the, quote, greatest generation and thinking about their service and their values. I am also so honored to be here today, 9/11. 9/11 is a day where we remember a tragedy, but it's also a day that we honor our heroes. And so I am honored to be a part of this moment, honoring our heroes and those who have served here.
So the way we're going to do things tonight is the first piece is we want to allow our veterans to introduce themselves. And so we're going to use the microphones. We'll set everything up. Let's take care of that right now. Let's move this one over here a little bit. And if you guys are free for moving it around. And so we're going to start. We're going to go right down the row. And if you can tell us your name, where you served, what years you served, and then that'll kind of be the introduction piece, okay?
Okay, my name is Faye Gedz, Sergeant Faye Gedz, and I served in North Africa and Italy in World War II. What else would I say?
What years did you serve?
Oh, I served, well, from 1943 to 1945. That was it.
Okay.
And I was overseas most of the time.
Pass it on to your brother.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sid Barsky. I'm a dermatologist now, and I was general medical officer in the Army, and I became a dermatologist after I came back. And so I was happy to be there, at least to do my duty, and I served from 1944 to 1946. And I'm still working as a doctor. I'm trying to, even though I'm 95 years old. So thank you very much. I appreciate talking to you.
Yes, my name is Rand Burdette. I served in the U.S. Army in World War II, and I also served in the U.S. Army in Korea. So I had a little bit of double duty. I served in the European theater, and that was during a period from the time I was drafted into the service, reluctantly, I must admit, at the time. But so be it. I ended up getting a commission, ended up in the infantry. I was with the 90th Infantry Division in Europe, and served there until I was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge, and went on limited duty after that in England. And then I came home to my family. I just married just prior to going into the service, being drafted into the service. Came back and raised 2 children, and then, or started 2 children anyway. I didn't get much chance to raise them yet, because then I got called back to go to Korea. And but at first, before going there, I did a lot of training of troops before they went over to Korea, and then I finally went on over. But I had it cushy at Korea because the front had stabilized, although I went to as far north as you could get in Korea at that time. But it was a stabilized front except to the left and the right of me, where the battles were really going on, so I didn't have any combat action really in Korea at all. But other people did a lot. And but I finally, they finally decided that they would allow some of us to go home, and some guy came up from Seoul and said, wouldn't you like to stay? I said, who are you talking to? No, thank you. So I took the trip back home and joined my family. I worked for the General Electric Company for some 35 years. Finally retired from them, and that's enjoyed retired life ever since. I live in Mount Prospect, Illinois. I'm a West Virginia mountaineer by birth.
Rand, tell them how long you were married to that woman that raised your kids when you were over there fighting in Korea.
How long? 62 years.
Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah,
No.
That's awesome. Now, someone who did see some actual crazy combat in the Korean War.
You're up.
You're up.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're up.
well, I got one, thank you.
Now you got 2.
Now I got 2 stereo.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Red Cross, and I was lucky enough to be an infantryman in Korea. My jobs were at night, where 12 or 14 of us would go out and try to bomb their bunkers, the Korean bunkers, the enemy's bunkers, and where they had stored their ammunition and certain bridges. My basic was engineer, and I thought, hey, that's not bad. That's going to be easy. Just build stuff. But those engineers were out there building day and night, getting fired at. Couldn't fire back. Had to keep on putting those nuts and bolts together. Wounds treated, I reported. The rest I just picked out of myself.
Oh, don't give away that. Those are the good stories. We're going to build up. We want to build up. We want to create suspense. Don't tell them about the wounds. These are good. No. Hold on. No. I'm setting you up with the wounds. Hold on. Yeah.
We'll start a little more about Korea, huh? When I arrived.
Tell us the years you were there. How long-
52, 54.
52 to 54.
And the
Okay.
worst battles were fought at the beginning and end.
Why was
Because the
that?
Koreans wanted to, keep moving that 38th parallel closer to the north, closer to the Chinese, and that's, by the way, what we were fighting toward the end. I don't think there were any Koreans, North Koreans. I think there was just Chinese. And of course, they're communist Chinese, so.
Okay.
What, is there anything else?
Oh, we got more. Yeah, we're gonna just
Okay.
the introductions right now.
Your turn.
I'm Russ Strahan. I served in the U.S. Navy 1961 to 1969, and my last tour was Vietnam.
I'm Cameron Kasmar. I was in the U.S. Marines from 2008 to May of 2013. I did 2 combat tours in Afghanistan, one in 2009 and 2011.
Then we have 2 gentlemen in the audience, so there isn't enough room for everyone up here. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. Carrie, and then Mr. Schultz. Yeah.
Actually, you might consider pulling those off. It'll be easier for them to hand it back. Hi, I'm Gary Rold. I'm the Dean of Admissions here at Elmhurst College. I served in Vietnam from 1971 to 1973. I was a military policeman. I was in a place called Phu Bai for a part of that time and in a place called Can Tho for the rest of it. So I think that's good enough. I'm sorry? Sort of. I finished college. In those days, they had a thing called a lottery, and my number was 20 in the lottery. And so when I left college, I knew I would be drafted eventually, so I actually just went down and joined up. So I wasn't going to leave the country or do anything to get out of it. I never really tried to get out of it, and was happy to serve and do my job as best I could.
Sir.
Would you want
Tell them what years you were in and where you served and where you were in. And your name.
Oh, my name is Connie Schultz, and I served in World War II towards the end in the Navy, and it was a great time, and a very good, very well privileged time serving my country.
I guess I would like you to tell me about why you served. Now, I know that many of you were drafted, but I'm particularly interested in Faye's answer. Faye was a WAC in World War II, and clearly Faye was not drafted. So, Faye?
What do you want me to say?
You went in, you volunteered.
Now, are you questioning why I went in? I went in because I was a real patriot. Now, I really mean that sincerely. We had heard so many terrible things happening over in Europe, and I figured I wanted to be a part of it. And especially when they said they were going to take women in the service, I was right there. I figured I'm going in, and that's what I did. And I was really ornery. I didn't even so much as to tell my parents too much about it. I said, I'm going in, and that was it. And that's how I got involved in the war.
Did you perceive yourself to be challenging gender roles, or was it just it was about your duty?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Did you see yourself as doing something new and extraordinary?
No, no. I was just, to me, this was something that had to be done, and I was personally going to take care of Hitler. I mean, that's the truth. You know, You do, as a youngster, this is how you feel. You're number one. And that's why I went in to serve. And I served, like I said, I went into the first place we were sent. I went in a convoy, 48 ships in a convoy, got over to Oran, North Africa, and then from there also, I was there for 11 months, and then we moved on to Italy, following the troops that had gone on to Italy. And that was it. So I served in Italy for about 9 months as well.
Thank you.
That's it.
Sid, Dr. Barsky?
Oh.
I know that you were drafted, but tell us about how you...
Well, all of us were drafted in World War II. That was part of it, So I wanted to go in anyway. I wanted to do my share. All my cousins and relatives were in, and I had to do my thing. Of course, most of the time, the early part of the World War II, from 1944 to 43, I was in medical school, so I was deferred. As soon as I finished medical school, I had a short internship at the Cook County Hospital, and from there, when I finished my internship, 1 week later, I was at Indiantown Gap in Pennsylvania and then ended up at Carlisle Barracks, which is now where the Army War College is in Pennsylvania. And then sent to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, then all the way to send overseas. I was at Fort Lawton in Seattle, Washington. They moved me around quite a bit. Then I ended up at Wahoo, at Pearl Harbor, at Schofield Barracks. And then I was there for a short time. And then they shipped me over to Okinawa. And that's how I ended up in the General Hospital. And originally I was a psychiatrist at the General Hospital. And then they found out I wasn't completely fully trained in psychiatry, so they sent me out to a medical collecting company. And I worked in the dispensary on Okinawa. And then from there, when the war ended, sometime around September 45, just right after the atomic bomb was dropped, we were shipped as Army of Occupation over to Korea. So I spent 5 months in Korea, and then came back to the States, and then entered further training at the Cook County Hospital, my residency, and then became a full-fledged dermatologist. And anyway, that was, like I say, was our privilege. We were very proud of Faye, who went in earlier than I did, but our family were true patriots too, and we were all very happy to do our share. Thank you.
Mr. Barnett, Rand comes from a family with a long tradition of service. Rand, if you could tell us about your service in World War II and in Korea. He has ancestors that he can date back to the Revolution and the Civil War.
I can't hear you. What did you say?
Mr. Barnett is going to tell us about the tradition of service in his family. Thank you. Mr. Barnett?
Okay. Well, I'll start out with World War II. I was drafted. Originally, when my draft number came up, I was turned down because I had a heart murmur. But it didn't take them long to decide they needed you anyway, whether you had a heart murmur or not. And so I was drafted. But up to that time, I was getting married just before they called me in. And so I had about a 2-week honeymoon, and then I went off to war. And while I went in, I first was a buck private and got a job at the induction station interviewing people because I'd worked for the DuPont company at that time in interviewing. And so I was interviewing the same guys for jobs in the Army that I came down on the train with. So, but that last job lasted about 6 months, and I didn't want that. I wanted a commission. I wanted to be in the Air Corps at that time. And so I tried to get in the Air Corps. Again, I was turned down because of a heart murmur. And so I finally ended up in the Combat Infantry School in Georgia and ended up with a shaved-tail commission as a second lieutenant and trained troops for a while in a couple of camps in Florida and Georgia, and then shipped overseas but the front, the landing at Omaha had already taken place, and I arrived there and had my first real inkling of what war was about when I got off of a landing ship, but we landed at a dock at Omaha Beach. The beach was clean and cleared, but you walked to the top of the hill, and there were thousands of white crosses of the graves of the guys who had won that beach so that I could walk on it and go up that hill. Anyway, I joined the 90th Infantry Division over there as a replacement officer, as a platoon leader, and finally worked my way up to being a company commander. Was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge in a combat situation, and spent 3 months back in England in a hospital, and then was put on limited duty, and my job was to staff the POW camps in southern England. That was a nice job there. So, and then finally, my time ran out, as it did for all of us. You had a number, and when your number came up, you were through. So I went back home, started raising a family, raised 2 kids, and then Mr. Truman decided to do something about the Korean War. You want me to continue with that? Okay. And so when I had gotten out of the Army, I signed up as a reservist because they told me I could make money, and I needed money. And so you might get work on the weekends and summer camps as a reservist. So I signed up. But I didn't know Mr. Truman was going to put us back into a war again, but he did. So I was recalled back into that. And after training some other recall troops at Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky, I finally got my call to go to Korea. And I ended up at the farthest point there was in Korea at the time. The front had been stabilized except to the right and left of me, where they were having battles on Heartbreak Ridge, and I forget what it was to the right now, the name of it. There were one to the left. But they were trying to straighten the line out because the line was like this and went up to a point, and they wanted to straighten it out because they would have less troops on the line that way. And so where I was, it was totally stabilized, although the Chinese were on the next hill over. I was in a battalion headquarters myself, one hill back. But there was artillery fire that went on, mortar fire and that sort of thing, but no actual attacks by either ourselves or the Chinese while I was there. And so finally, MacArthur decided he wanted to go back on the attack, go back to the Yalu River. And so we were relocated to go off on an attack on that. And that's when Truman fired him. The attack did not take place, and the whole front stabilized into a long-term, drawn-out situation right and left of where I was, which was the farthest point north. It turned out to be, looked like the worst place, but it turned out to be, for me, the best place because there wasn't any combat other than patrol work going on in there. And so when my number came up to go home, things were pretty much stabilized. The peace talks were still going on and on and on. And so I went back home, went back to my job with General Electric, and had another child, and spent the rest of my happy life with my wife and my kids. And
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Cross, Glen Cross, is a veteran from the Korean War, and he very quickly disabused me of that vision that I have from MASH of helicopters landing in Korea. Isn't that true?
Oh, no. No. They just started using it in the beginning of the war, and it was, I don't know whether it was 3-man or whether it was, 3-man, one, the helicopter operator and the 2 men that they put on each side. MASH is probably giving you a little bit of that because they've shown the helicopters and picking up wounded. And let's see, is there anything else that you like on that?
Tell us a little more about your experience in Korea, and I know you were wounded.
4 times, 3 that they know of. The others, I just picked the pieces out. I was lucky I had some, aftershave lotion. They were supposed to have alcohol in it, so I'd use that for the astringent. And
Mr. Kars, tell them when you found your last wound. Tell the audience when you found the last wound.
The last wound?
After the war.
When you found it.
When they found the evidence of the last wound after the war. You were telling me the story at dinner 20 years later.
Yeah, I can't recall that now.
Oh, okay. You were
I
telling
thought you said the last wound.
Yeah, when you got wounded, you said you didn't know that you had shrapnel carrying it around for 20 years.
Oh, I was at Elmhurst Hospital. I had a bad hip. And, well, I ended up with 2 bad hips because I had a big piece of shrapnel in my right hip. Now that's going out because I'm using that. That is supplementing the left hip. And the doctor said, "Say, were you in the service?" I said, "Yes, I was." "How did you know?" "Because you don't put that in the application when you're in the hospital." And he said, "Well, we got quite a large piece out of your hip." He said, "It didn't seem to have bothered you any because I guess science makes a little kind of form around the shrapnel, and that keeps it from rusting and from giving you blood poisoning." I didn't know that.
You're a healthy man.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that. Sometimes I have to use the stick, but I can still perform with our American Legion for funeral services and such as that. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Strand, here, I'll pass this.
I'll take this one.
Would you tell us more about your service?
Unlike my esteemed colleagues, I volunteered. I enlisted. I got out of high school. I didn't do well enough in grades to get scholarships. My parents told me I was on my own, so I thought maybe I'd try to get an education from the government. Looked at the 4 branches, figured maybe the Navy had the best schools, and that's where I went in. That's when I learned that recruiters lie a lot. In any event, I did get an education, interrupted slightly by chipping a lot of paint hanging over the side of some fast gray ships. Spent time feeding the ships that were patrolling for the Cuban Missile Crisis. We were supplying the blockade forces, and then because Mr. Khrushchev blinked, they sent us to Japan for 9 months. And the guys that went to work that morning with a brown bag for lunch didn't see their wives for 9 months, so they were a little surprised. After that, I put a guided missile cruiser in commission in 1964. Did some shore duty in Washington, D.C., and then Vietnam came along. Having been born in '43 and my father serving with Patton and others in the family serving in other areas, I saw there was a war and thought maybe there was a need, so I volunteered to go to Vietnam. Ended up selected to go and trained to be a volunteer advisor. So I traveled the rivers, the canals, and the coast with Vietnamese service ships, interdicting and stopping the shipment of arms and ammunition wherever we could, and keeping supplies from coming in off the coast.
Thank you. Thank you. Cameron, you served in Afghanistan. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I went to boot camp a week after high school. I also volunteered because obviously last time we had a draft, it didn't work out too well. So the benefits that were offered to the military initially got my attention, but the real reason I joined was out of patriotism. I wanted to serve my country, and our country was at war, and they needed guys to go overseas and fight it. So it seemed pretty clear to me. During my 2 tours in Afghanistan, I was a foreign military advisor, and what that essentially means is I was embedded with my primary job was a military policeman, but I actually didn't do any military police work until my 4th year in, my 5th year in. But when we went over there, we were partnered with an infantry squad under an infantry battalion, and we worked with the Afghan Army and the Afghan National Police to sort of advise and mentor them and train them to eventually, take over the country when we leave, or when we eventually left. And it's a lot harder than it sounds. The the culture, the difference in culture, the language barriers, the ethnicities. There's 6, 7 major tribes in Afghanistan, and there's another 30 or 40 smaller ones, and most of them hate each other. So it's really hard to, and they're all coming together in the same unit, the same Afghan army and Afghan police unit we were working with. So most of them didn't speak all one language. There were 4 or 5 different languages or different dialects being spoken in the units we were embedded with. We actually needed interpreters for our interpreters so that we could, it sucked. But trying to train these guys, most of them were there mainly for the paycheck. They didn't really feel much, I guess, pride in serving their country the way I did. And it's understandable because Afghanistan's been at war for decades, and
Cameron, what do you do now?
I'm going to school at Northern Illinois University, so the GI Bill and the benefits are definitely paying off. So.
What are you studying?
Finance.
Very cool. I wanted to ask Andrew over here, although I think he might not want me to. Andrew is a current Elmhurst College student, and he served in Iraq and Afghanistan. You want to say something about his service?
Yeah, my name is Andrew. I'm a Marine. I served from 2005 to 2009. I went to Iraq in 2007 outside of Fallujah, and I went to a town called Musa Kala in Afghanistan in 2008. Just echoing what Cameron said, it was a pretty difficult situation for a lot of reasons, and happy to be home. I lost a few friends, and it's been difficult since coming back, but I'm a student here at Elmhurst, and everyone's been very helpful and looking to get my life started.
Can you help us speculate about how we as a culture or country could make it a little less difficult?
Not send anyone to war.
There's another Elmhurst connection, and we want to share this with you, and we want to kind of bring this home a little bit, that there's people in our college or they're graduated from our college that are experiencing this type of stuff, and so we want to give you a chance.
My name's Tom Gilligan. I graduated in 2007 from Elmhurst. I enlisted, actually took a semester off my senior year, and I enlisted, and then pursued deployments right after that. Ended up going to Egypt in 2010. Was there for when Mubarak and the revolution started, and the whole mess that's currently going on in northern Africa and the Middle East really started there. And then I just got back from Afghanistan about 70 days ago. Was a commander for a company of about 130 people over there. We were spread out through the whole country. Had the pleasure of working with various people from various different countries. But just echoing these guys, the challenges are really large working with the culture that is there. They just don't understand the idea of a community that's outside of their immediate family, and that's our biggest challenge, is trying to teach them. As in America, it's intrinsic to us. We all understand that America is more than the neighborhood you grew up in, but most of them, they don't understand that, and that's our biggest challenge as American soldiers and Polish soldiers and various other nationalities that are there, is to try to teach that to them. But obviously, as you all know, it's going really well. So, but.
We'll start with you, and Cam and I talked about this at dinner. So when you were there, do you get a sense of purpose? I mean, so it seemed easier for the World War II veterans. Hitler made it easy, right? He's doing this awful stuff, was a patriotism. And then when we get to Rand, we get to the Korean War, things seem to get a little more complicated, a little more political. So I wanted to give all of you an opportunity to talk about that. But we'll start with our Afghanistan, Iraq vets, and just what was it like being there, sense of purpose?
Well, sense of purpose as a leader, when you're in the Army and you're trying to prepare soldiers that are 17, 18, 19 years old to go into combat, and they all have their beliefs and various, political stances, and when they're sitting there telling you, well, hey, sir, why are we doing this? What's the point? I don't want to go. We know it's going to be a waste of time. And so your job as a leader is to try to sell this to them, no matter what, because you have to convince them it's worth it. Because at one point, unfortunately, it may come down to a decision where you have to, sacrifice, one of your soldiers or yourself in order to do what we have to do, that we're over there to do. But the purpose portion, I don't know if these two gentlemen, they can put it maybe in better words than I can. Can't really say that there is a lot of purpose that we find internally to justify for being over there. All of us that join have that. We're doing our part, and we're all going to be able to look in the mirror at 40 and say, we stepped up and we did what our country asked us to do when they asked us. But for this particular war and this particular mission, it's difficult. But our number one job is always to get our soldiers home alive. And but when you think about that a little deeper, it makes you really try to understand, well, if that's your main purpose for going somewhere, then why are you going in the first place? It's a challenge. It's I don't know. I can't really quantify.
That's fair. No, I mean that's your experience.
Do you want to reply, Cam?
Cam, do you want to?
It didn't really. I mean, I was really excited at the prospect of working. This is before I went over there. I was very excited at the prospect of actually working with, people from a different country. I grew up in Barrington, Illinois, and I know a lot of people probably know where that is. It's a white collar suburban paradise, So being thrown into Afghanistan was a huge culture shock for me, and it took a while for all of us really as Americans to get used to it. But as far as purpose goes, like I said, I was really excited to do it. But when you get over there, it's a whole different ball game. There's a lot of things that are not revealed in the media for a good reason. I think there's a lot of things that people back here don't understand about what's going on over there. But for us, it's pretty clear. I think, me personally, the reason is, well, I'm there, and this is my mission, this is my objective, and I'm more fighting for the Marine on my left and the Marine on my right than I am for any political motivations. So to me, it was just I'm there and I'm stuck here for 6 or 7 months, and I just gotta do it. That was it.
Thank you. Your experiences were so recent. I'm wondering, for the veterans from, say, World War II, how long was it before you were comfortable talking about your experience? I know we're reading in our FYS class, we're reading a book called The Greatest Generation, and what we hear many of the veterans saying is they came back and they didn't really talk about it. How long did it take before you could talk about that experience?
Start with you.
Actually, it didn't take me any time at all. I never even, I'm very outspoken, so it just never bothered me about anything. I just took life as it was. It just happened, that's it. So I just talked about it. Anybody questioned me, fine. Other than that, I never even discussed it. I don't remember even discussing my experiences unless somebody asked me. I had a lot of fun experiences. I had a lot of sad experiences, but I never talked about it. That was it. Part of my life.
I feel the same. We Barskys are very outspoken. I was willing to talk about it. In fact, I wanted young people to know about what we had been through, because it was no secret, and I think we all should be patriotic. And another reason why I felt so strongly about my duty in World War II is I had many relatives who died in the concentration camps in Europe, and so I was very strong about having to get involved. And unfortunately, I didn't get to Europe. I went to the Pacific Theater, but still, it was the war, and we had to do it. We had to be involved.
Well, I don't know that there was an awful lot of talk about it. There was between myself and a friend. When I returned and established a home with my family, with my wife, and not my family yet, but my wife, across the street was another gentleman, his wife, and we found out that we both served in the same division, the 90th Division. We were in different regiments, but we were in the same theater. So he and I had a lot of conversations about his action and my action in that same war. So that was most of the talk. There wasn't a lot of talk about the war among my family, among my friends on the return. Of course, most of my friends had been in service, one service of the other, Air Force or the Air Corps or the Navy. But nobody really wanted to spend any time talking about that. They wanted to talk about the future. And what are we going to do? How are we going to get rich, for example? How are we going to enjoy life? How are we going to raise families? And that was the discussion. There wasn't a lot of discussion about what happened in the war.
It was about the future. About the future.
More about the future. Yeah, where are we headed? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I think this is a good question to kind of keep with. You know, what was the... You're up, Mr. Johnson.
Who's asking the question?
I'm asking you. I'm asking you.
I thought you
when, once you returned to the United States, when did you first feel comfortable talking about the experience and the wounds? And
About 6 to 8 months, I guess. The only thing my folks noticed was that I'd sit down, watch a little television, get up, get in my car, leave. Don't know where I was going, but I left, came back, and I'd do that maybe several times a night. They told me this later, you know. But otherwise, the effects, the wounds, this and that, it's just like life, you know. Look at that huge building, there were 2 buildings that went down. That was on the History Channel, and that's the first one I saw that was so good. You know, showing what happened, and the dogs and their job. And there was something else, wasn't there? Did you want to know? No? Okay. I noticed there's a couple of guys, second row over here, with vests on that remind me of my Harley days. They're doing a heck of a job. They're making sure that these naysayers and wars are all crazy, and you know they want to disturb services, death services, and stuff like that. They've done a lot for us, and I want to thank them for it.
My father, as I said, had served with Patton during the Second World War. So when I first got home, I went back to the small town where I grew up in western Massachusetts, and there was no one there at the time I came back who had ever served recently in Vietnam at all. So my father and I talked a little bit. He told me things he had never told me before. I told him a little bit. And then we just didn't talk much anymore, and you sure didn't tell anybody in public about it. A lot of people wondered where I got that good suntan, and I just kind of ducked it because it was not a popular thing. We got swore at, spit at, buckets of blood thrown at us in San Francisco International Airport, escorted by MPs so we could get through the airport to our flights. It wasn't a good time. And then later on, I was divorced, came home in '69, divorced in '80. Was flashing back now and again and was dating a girl. I flashed back a couple of times with her. So I talked to her a little bit about it. And then I've got a couple grandchildren that are now 28 and 26. When they were in the 5th and 6th grade, their history teacher wanted somebody to talk to them about Vietnam, didn't know anybody. So my granddaughter said, well, I think I know somebody. And she asked me if I'd go. She said I didn't have to, but would I? So I did go for that history teacher, and the kids liked the talk so much he asked me to stay for 4 more classes. And I was amazed at the interest these young kids had and the questions and the comments they had. So that was really the first time that I talked to anybody publicly about it. Until I joined the Legion, we talked there. But that's more recent.
Gary, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the same question, and And also, if you could address, I want to get the Vietnam veterans after Gary talks about when he starts about, is that sense of purpose. I want to go back to that question. So,
well, I'll start with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I said before that I was sort of drafted. Yeah, I would not have chosen to go on my own, but once I got there and you get an assignment, you learn a job. And Cameron said it. If I don't do my job, he gets killed. And that's a hell of a motivator for you to do your job and so on. And the politics of it, I think perhaps for the World War II veterans, they may have felt that. I didn't feel the politics of it. I'd been through college. I'd seen all the debates about the rights and wrongs of it. But when you go, you have things to do. You have an assignment, and if you don't do your job properly, then that reflects badly on you, and you live with that the rest of your life. I mean, I still have I have contact. There's a group of guys who I served with, and we get together every once in a while. They're all over the country. We get together in Las Vegas, of all places, because it's cheap hotel rooms. And we talk about our experience, and we're still sort of catharsizing that. For me, it was definitely got me outside of my comfort zone. I would not have chosen to go to Vietnam on my own, but having done it, I say I'm proud of the experience. It was something that I learned about a side of life that I would not have learned in any other way, and it's a very hard thing to explain. We were at dinner talking about this. For the World War II veterans, if they marched through a French farmer's field, and they messed up his crop to drive the Germans away, the French farmer was happy with that. If you're in Vietnam and you march through the rice paddies of the average farmer, you have just created an enemy. And so the people around us didn't want us to be there. I hardly ever fought against the NVA, the North Vietnamese regulars. I fought against the Viet Cong. So that means the person who washed my socks during the day went out into the hills and shot mortars at me at night. I've had more mortars shot at me than I can count. I felt that at one time my job in life was to draw fire, because I spent a lot of time dodging bullets, not so much returning it, but getting shot at from the bush and places. In North Vietnam, or in northern part of South Vietnam, near Hue, where I was most of the time, it was not defoliated, but it was not the heavy lush jungle that you think of when you see scenes of Vietnam. It was more open and so on, and we felt that openness. I came back with my arms and legs. I have buddies who didn't. A lot of them, napalm issues and other kinds of things, I'm sorry, not napalm, but the defoliant that was used in South Vietnam. There were lots of, a lot of my buddies had issues with that and so on. All that said, I think in the end, was there a purpose to it? I don't know. My purpose was to serve the people around me, which is, I think, what we get to do in life. We get to serve the people around us, and if you can invest in that, then you got something. If the higher purpose becomes very elusive when you get in a combat circumstance, it's harder to keep that focused. I'm sorry, I've over-answered the question.
No, Gary, that's great. Ross, you want to answer that the sense of purpose when you were there?
The sense of purpose was that I believed in the domino theory. We had to stop them there. I didn't want them coming here. I had 2 children, 1-year-old and 3 years old, and I didn't want the problems here. I wanted to stop it there. So that's why I volunteered to go there. Once I went there, unlike my colleagues, I was an advisor. I was embedded with the Vietnamese, but I served with different Vietnamese all the time. I patrolled rivers on junks, on patrol craft, on PBRs and swift boats. We patrolled off the coast, and it was always with the different crews. I came home in 1969. In 1973, the war ended, and all the people I served with became prisoners and got re-educated. So I don't know where any of the people are that I served with. I can't have reunions with the people I served with. It was hard to have, I'm fighting for the guy on the right and the guy on the left. Yes, I knew who they were, and we were fighting for each other, because if we didn't fight together, we didn't make it through. One of the problems was when we're going up a canal and we start getting tracers from a riverbank, and they're green tracers, and we can't shoot back because we have to get permission from a province chief because it's not a free fire zone. And it turns out that the province chief knows the people that are shooting at us, and he doesn't want us to hurt them because they may be his cousins. So it's a little difficult sometimes to be comfortable with some of that. The politics were really mixed up over there. Really was an interesting place. But sense of purpose, yes. We felt that we were doing the right thing, and I'll tell you something else, militarily we were winning it. We didn't win the hearts and minds of the U.S. people. That's where we lost the war.
Thanks.
We didn't lose it militarily.
Rand, I want to give you a chance to wrestle with that question, because you lived in two different worlds. You lived in World War II, where the sense of purpose seemed to be so black and white, and then the Korean War, and you and I talked a little bit about that, and so if you could share your own feelings about that.
Well, and of course, World War II, a totally different thing there. It was like a global war, you know, and there was no question but what you were going to crush Hitler and stop that madness that he had created in Germany and France and Netherlands and the places he had taken over. So you had a real reason to go over there and do that job because everybody hated it, what was going on over there. So it was pretty easy to say, hey, I you know, even though I was drafted into the service, I didn't volunteer. I didn't have any compunctions about wanting to go and fight because of what the situation was over there. Korea was a little bit different. Korea was sort of a political type war in some sense between the North Korean and South Koreans. And then, of course, the Chinese wanted to come in and really came in and took that war over. And I was happy, really happy, of course, to see it finally end, because a lot of people had lost their lives, and I didn't feel that this was a war we should have been in. But that was a personal feeling about it myself. I felt sorry for the South Koreans. There's certainly that. There were a lot of nice South Koreans I got acquainted with while I was over there. Beautiful people. I suppose the North Koreans are beautiful people also, but I don't know any of them that I know of. And I'm sorry that they're under the kind of government that they are under. There couldn't be one Korea really for all over there. But that's the way the world crumbles.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I'm mighty happy, of course, that, you know, that the war finally ended over there, although apparently it has never ended.
Right.
It is
right.
still going on, and it may get worse yet again.
Let me. This is sort of a final question, and then we want to open it up. We've done our best to try to get as many of the 19-year-olds, 20-somethings, sort of the next generation assembled here. And I want to ask all the veterans, I'd love to live in a world that Andrew talked about, where this is not going to happen again, and we're not going to have this conversation again, but chances are that's not going to happen. So we are going to have veterans in the future. We're going to have these political situations in the future. And so what I would like each of you to do is take this opportunity to tell the Elmhurst campus, to tell these 20-somethings, how can they serve veterans? How can they help veterans when veterans come home from foreign wars? What could you have used? What did you appreciate? That kind of thing. That's what I'd really like us to kind of walk away with.
Wow. Frankly, I had not. No, you threw this at me. I really don't know. I haven't the slightest idea. It has to be something that they feel. This is how I feel. In other words, if some friend of yours came home from the service, just welcome him. That's it. I don't know what else I could say other than to befriend him and welcome him and thank him for what he had done. That's it.
Thank you.
You know, Sid?
Well, we should all support all the veterans hospitals and the charitable organizations that are supporting the welfare and the benefits for the veterans. They deserve that. They have to understand that we appreciate what they've been through, and not to ignore their problems when they come to us for help.
What I feel the most about is the gentleman over here who fought in Vietnam. And I am opposed to the way they were treated when they returned from the duties that they performed. That was really upsetting to me, having been in that kind of a situation, and then not getting their recognition for all the hard work and loss of life and loss of limb that happened to those people over there fighting in that war. I felt more about Vietnam than I felt about any war, about what was going on over there and what our troops went through and what kind of treatment they got when they came back, which to me was appalling. So that's my heartfelt feeling.
Oh boy, this is a hard way to go. I've had a lot of good speakers here. I wish somebody had asked a question or something like that.
What should they do to welcome the vets home?
Oh yeah, don't pry. Just be decent. Stay away from bars. The veterans should stay away from the bars because they're going to get somebody that's going to say something that's going to light them like a fuse. It's funny, I didn't have the First World War, Second World War. That was a hard one, but I was a youngster. I was, I don't know, a Cub Scout. But we used to go up and down railroads and pick up any kind of metal we could find, whether they be part of a rail or a spike, and turn that in for money so we could buy defense war bonds that we're helping. People were more with it. My mother was even a gal that had to go at a theater and spend all night at a desk trying to sell war stamps and bonds. So you'd get so many stamps in a book, and then you'd get an 1875, which would turn out to be, what was it, $25 with interest. But I mean, the spirit was there, the Second World War. I didn't see it in the previous wars. I just didn't see it. It was like, okay, that's going on pretty far away, and it's not bothering me. I can still go to the show tomorrow and this and that and do whatever I want to do. We need more of that. We need a more esprit de corps, I tell you. As far as war is concerned, boy, I just love to say this. This just makes everybody scratch their head. I know how to stop wars. You want to know how? Like the White House or wherever, the Kremlin or this or that. You put the boys that are taking the big bucks and put them in the front lines with me. And we'll see no more wars. Believe me, believe me. And it's so simple, and Einstein wouldn't probably think it was anything either, but...
That's good.
Why wouldn't that work?
I don't know. That was a great line from
Why wouldn't that work?
Front.
So all I can say is we should all gather together in all these doggone wars and see what we can do. It might be something small, it might be something large. But I just don't want to see another one. I don't want to hear of another one. I'm going to pass it on. Unless you want me to jabber for another hour, I can do it.
No.
Okay. Thank you. I think we're doing a pretty good job right now today. We've got great big groups greeting the vets coming in at airports. We've got you guys on your motorcycles with your flags escorting them home. Families are arranging welcome home, doing a great job, but you want to remember something. Starting with Vietnam, there's some strange things going on. I happen to be one of the beneficiaries of having been sprayed with that stuff on the riverbanks, Agent Orange. I went through prostate cancer with that. There are other things going on with the veterans from Iraq. We don't even know what's all going to come out of Afghanistan. So there's a lot of strange things. We cannot forget who served. People have given of themselves unselfishly to do for this country. Remember, this is all volunteer today. There's no draft. These young men and women are going out there on their own because they feel it's the thing to do in serving and going unselfishly into harm's way in many ways. So we cannot forget that, and we have to continue to take care of them.
What you guys are doing right now is amazing. I've never seen anything like this before. A panel that invites veterans to come and speak about their experiences at a college. I don't think it's ever been done before. Not that I've heard of it. So, I think the best thing you can do is to just expose yourselves to this other side of the fence, so to speak, and to just think outside the box. Don't listen to, I guess the best way to say this is pay attention to what the media says, but pay attention to what they don't say. Like this gentleman sitting next to me, he hit it right on the dot. There really is, I really don't know how to explain it, but you have to take into consideration that everything you're being told is probably not true. And everything you're not being told, same thing. There's so many scandals going on, like with Benghazi, just to throw that out there. But that's a whole different can of worms. I'm not going to open that up. But doing things like this, just listening to the veterans as they come home. Don't do what the last generation did during Vietnam. Don't throw harsh words at the veterans when they come back, because otherwise you're going to get a fistful of teeth.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm going to give you the last word. This is your alma mater. I'm sure you used to hang out in here before you went off. And tell them what can they do?
I'd say everyone up here said it pretty well. But the most important thing is don't think that soldiers are the young, dumb kid that couldn't barely graduate high school. My particular company, most of them, actually all of them had high school degrees or diplomas, and most of them have bachelor's degrees, some of them PhDs and master's degrees. And these are the grunts. These are the ones that go and they dig ditches and things like that. So, just the understanding that this populace that makes up the Army today is not, it's not what, would be a typical Army. It is very much, they're very smart. They blend in with you guys very well with everyone. So the most important thing is just always be cognizant of that they're everywhere. I'm sure there's several out here that just haven't said anything because they don't feel they have a need to. But also, really important, I think, for most of us, being just back is space. Offer your assistance, offer your thanks, but remember that most of us just need a little bit of space to deal with whatever we have to deal with after coming back. Some of us saw certain things, some of us didn't. All of us had different experiences. But don't pry. I forget which gentleman up there said it. Don't pry anything out of them. Just kind of let them give their space. Ask if they want to share. If they don't, just kind of be like, okay, appreciate it. And that's, and just keep doing what we're doing, because it's good stuff. And our soldiers, they have all the support they need today if they want it. So.
Gary, if you want to.
I don't have any pearls of wisdom here about this, and I think they've said it. You welcome people, you understand people's lives. Vietnam didn't kill me, but it killed my mother. I don't know anything about this young lady over here. She's Tom's girlfriend. If he goes, she suffers. So we're here talking about sacrifice, and I will live a little bit of guilt until the day I die. For my mother would watch channel. She was in Pittsburgh, and Channel 2, Channel 5, Channel 7. Those were ABC, NBC, and CBS in that area. And she would do that every night. I'd be guarding some damn gate somewhere, just staring off into space, perfectly safe on that particular evening. She was going nuts. And so I think if we're going to talk about sacrifice, we have to talk about the people who are back home. My son's 26. frankly, if I had the choice today, I'm 64, they would never take me, I'm completely useless. But if I had the choice today of waiting at home, figuring out what the hell's going on for him in some foreign land or going myself, I'd go. And that's a part of what we're not talking about, and I just want to get it on the table because I think it's a real big part of it. It was a big part of the deal for me. My mother aged more in those 2 years than I did. I did my job. I just came home. I just got back into life as best I could. It stuck with her till the day she died, and she died in her early 70s. The woman could have lived to 90. It took a hell of a toll on her, and I'll never quite get away from that. And even though I didn't do it myself, I was a part of it. Enough.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we want to open it up for some questions. We have a couple minutes, and so I saw there's a hand right here. Mary, do you want? Sure.
I'm just going to move forward. I am Lori Tompos. I'm a current Elmhurst college student, but I'm also a vet, and I was a part of the Gulf War, the first one. So I was in Desert Storm. I was one of the first women that went through West Point. I graduated, and then shortly after, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And so speaking of purpose, we had clear purpose in that case to get that back. And so I worked on the Patriot missile system, and I was in air defense artillery. I was stationed in 32nd ADCOM in Germany, but then I went over and I got dropped in the desert with 11 infantrymen whose only job was to keep me alive, because my job was to set up the site, the Patriot missile site, and no one else knew how to do it. And at that time, when we got back, I have to say I do feel supported, and I feel like we've come a long way from where we've been, and thank God for that. We've needed to do that. We need to support our vets, and thank God for the job that they do and the people that they are. And this has been a great thing to have everyone have their service and be proud of that and kind of highlight that. I thank Elmhurst College for allowing everyone to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add a couple of things. My name is Dominic Ruggiero. I'm a retired U.S. Army, and my colleague is Gary Vander Roos, and he's a Marine Corps. We are representatives of Rolling Thunder. Rolling Thunder is a national organization, consists of 87 chapters nationwide. Our primary mission is to educate the public on the prisoner of war and missing in action issue. We currently have a prisoner of war in Afghanistan. He's been there over 4 years. His name is Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. We work every single day of our lives trying to get this young man free. And there's a lot of issues from the political realm that we can't deal with, but we hope the powers to be. We have some pamphlets back at the desk we'd like you to take and read and write your congressman and do whatever you can to help us get them. Our Rolling Thunder's secondary mission is to support the veterans and veterans activities. And we're a nonprofit organization, and we raise money. We have we have a motorcycle raffle every year. We have a gun bash every year. All of our monies goes back into the veterans program. In the last 3 years, we have given $250,000 to the veterans organizations in the area, the LaSalle Veterans Home, the Midwest Shelter for Homeless Vets in Wheaton, Hines Veterans Hospital, a Blind Center, and the Spinal Injury Center. And we're currently supporting the Concord, who is establishing a 35-room veterans complex on the 15th floor right over here at North Avenue and Lake Street. So I wish that one of the things you can do to support the veterans is, number one, was echoed earlier, welcome them back, volunteer. They can sure use some volunteer help. I hope that you gentlemen from World War II have had the opportunity to participate in Honor Flight. If you haven't, you got to do that. You have to participate in Honor Flight, and I'll be happy to discuss it with you afterward if you're not familiar with it. There's so many things ongoing for veterans, and we got to keep everything in perspective. And add to the Agent Orange issue, that's still haunting many, many folks. And I say, to put it in perspective, I could be standing no further away than I am from you, sir. Mm-hmm. And 72 hours later, there's not a bit of green. Right. So that's how quick that stuff reacted. So it didn't do anybody any good. Right. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. We're going to wrap it up right now. The veterans are going to be here for a little bit of time afterwards. You feel free to ask them up. I'm going to ask.
One last one. One last.
Sure.
Hi, good evening. My name's Joe Chiodo, and I'm the commander of American Legion Post in Hinsdale, Illinois. There are two things that I'd like to bring up that I heard this evening. First, we need to take care of our veterans. We also need to recruit new veterans to join the American Legion. And also, as being a Vietnam veteran, I was in the Marines, I volunteered. I had uncles that served in World War II in Korea. But when I came home, I have to say exactly what this gentleman says on this day. People call us war babies. People spit on us. I was one of the Marines that was stationed at Quantico, Virginia, that tore down Resurrection City. We were very patriotic for our country, but when I came home and saw all the disruption, my morale went completely down. We were in Vietnam to serve all of you, to fight for our country, and for our country to treat us that way when we came home was really heartbreaking. So I'm telling all the young people, never, never do that to a veteran. He has given everything for you and for the next generation. I encourage all the veterans from Iraq and Iran war to join the American Legion or the VFW. Get involved with your veteran organization. Go over to Heinz Hospital and volunteer. Take an hour of your time and play poker with the veterans who are committed there for the rest of their lives. And if we do just a little part of that, then we're all true Americans. And I thank you. And I thank Elmhurst College for having this wonderful program. It is really enlightening, and all the veterans that are sitting here are greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Just one last announcement before we leave. We want to let you know that Elmhurst College, we want to continue this conversation. We want to continue talking about Veterans Affairs. I just want to introduce one of our students who has some programming stuff that she's going to talk about.
Hi, my name's Sarah Hines. I'm a psychology major here at Elmhurst, and I'm actually the Rosa Parks intern for social justice at the Niebuhr Center this year. So as part of my internship, I'm currently researching the relationship between mental illness and homelessness. And in addition, I've started a group on campus called Active Minds. And this group serves to be an advocacy group for getting Elmhurst and the college campus to talk about mental illness. And as a part of this group this semester, we're going to continue the focus and talk about how the focus on veterans and being able to educate the campus on PTSD. I was doing a little research, and in August, Sergeant Michael Carter received the Congressional Medal of Honor due to his services in Afghanistan, and he actually openly said that post-traumatic stress doesn't just go away, and that people, like, he wouldn't have been able to be where he is today and still be alive if it wasn't for him being able to reach out and receive counseling that he needed. And he really has recommended it for other veterans who have gone through similar situations. An estimated 22 veterans committed suicide in America each day in 2010, according to a report released by the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. Many veterans carry the stress, trauma, memories of active duty with them when they return. Some struggles with depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other mental health issues. And many of the veterans feel like they can't seek help for this because it's a closed issue. And according to NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, depression is one of the most common and expensive mental disorders, costing the United States an estimated $66 billion a year. And veterans diagnosed with depression account for slightly more than 14% of this amount. During our Active Minds meeting on October 22nd that we're going to be having, we meet once a month, but specifically on this date, October 22nd, here at Elmhurst, we're going to be discussing more in depth the way that veterans are affected by mental illness, PTSD, and so on, and how we can eliminate that stigma that surrounds that issue. I'd also like to invite you to join Active Minds and many other groups on September 21st. We're going to be having a walk that is addressing the stigma that surrounds mental illness. The walk is going to actually be hosted by NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, of Chicago, and is going to be in Grant Park in Chicago at 3 p.m. on the 21st. If you're interested in participating, interested in knowing more about Active Minds, more about the walk, anything at all, I definitely welcome you to talk to me. I'd be more than happy to talk to you guys about it. But I just really stress that it's important to keep this conversation going, to not stop here, not to stop on this day. It's important to keep talking about it and to make sure that everyone's aware of what's happening and that everyone's comfortable to share and to really be able to give honor to everything, to all of these people who have served us.
Thank you. Thanks.